Hello once again and welcome back. This is Jenna from McGuire. So today I am sharing with you ways to create your own stamps from your dies. Now I've done a video in the past where I've used craft foam to create your own stamps from dies, and I'll link to it up here on the top right and in my description below. Today I'm going to build on that idea and show you more ways to use craft foam for stamps and also how to use paper to create your own stamps. It really gives a fun effect and is a great way to get more out of your dies. And the best part is this works with whatever dies you may have. So let's get started with this first example. On this one, I will be using craft foam, but I'll be using parts of a die. So I have a piece of white craft foam. This is the craft foam that we've been using in crafts since we were kids. I use one that I get from Simon Says Stamp, and it works great for many different card making uses. And I link to that below, but you can try whatever craft foam you may find. Now I also want to use a double-sided adhesive so I can put adhesive on the back of this craft foam. I'm using Couture Creations Die Cut and Bond. I've been using this lately. I think it's hard to find, so be sure to click that Notify Me button. But any kind of double-sided adhesive would work here. So now I have craft foam with adhesive on one side. Now I'm going to take this beautiful sunflower stem die from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to run it through my die cut machine with this piece of craft foam and that tape that's on one side. Now I'm running that through, and there we have our die cut. That's made of craft foam and has adhesive on one side. And you could either cut on the side with the adhesive or on the side with the foam. That way you can get a reverse image if you wanted to. So I'm cutting off the stem and just dealing with the top of the sunflower first. Notice that I didn't stamp the outline of the sunflower stem. I only stamped the petals on the inside pieces. So I'm going to remove the release paper from those inside pieces, but keep the release paper on the outline. So I just kind of hook my craft knife under the release paper and pull it away, exposing the adhesive behind. You could use a craft knife or a paper piercer or tweezers for this. Now, if your fingers start to stick to the exposed adhesive, I recommend getting a bigger piece of release paper that you have left over from another project and placing that onto the exposed adhesive instead of your fingers. It won't stick to that, and that keeps you from getting the pieces stuck to you. So I'm just going to continue to remove all those little pieces. It's very easy to do. And now we have our sunflower with the adhesive exposed on the inside pieces. Now I don't want this to be too sticky, so I am just tapping my anti-static powder bag above it and letting it fall onto that so that it's a little less sticky. Turns out you don't need to do this, but I thought I'd give it a try just to remove some stick. Okay, so now I'm putting this into my MISTI stamping tool, and I'm positioning it. The adhesive is facing up towards the camera. And once I have it positioned on my white piece of cardstock, I'm going to close the door on my MISTI stamping tool, and it'll stick to the door. So now I can remove that outline piece. Remember, I didn't expose the adhesive, so it comes off easily. And the best part is I can use this outline piece as a stamp on another project. Or I could glue it down onto my project and have craft foam on the front of my card. Okay, so now we just have the inside pieces in our MISTI ready to stamp. I'm always impressed with the good results that you get with stamping with craft foam. I think it works great with dye inks or pigment inks. I chose to use Simon Says Stamp inks for this example. I first stamped it in duckling yellow, thought that was a little too dull, so I stamped on top of it again with the brighter yellow. Then I wanted some darker color in the center, so I'm coming in with a darker orange and a brush, a life-changing brush, to apply some orange onto the stamp in the center. That way I only have the darker color towards the middle and it blends out nicely. And you can add as much or as little as you want to this. Okay, so now I'm removing all the petals so I can stamp just the inside of my sunflower. If you want to save these pieces to use again, I'll show you a trick for that in my next example, so stay tuned. Okay, so now that I've removed the petals, it's time to ink this center up with a brown ink. I want to make sure that that center is nice and brown. So I stamp it first with the dark orange, then I come in with a brown and I use a blending tool to kind of get a soft color, and then I end up adding even more. Now, if you don't have a stamping tool, you definitely can use an acrylic block for this, and I'll show you that in my next example. Okay, so now it's time to do the stem. So I'm going to cut the leaves away. I just want to do the stem alone. But I was finding that this was sticking to my finger when I removed the release paper. So here's a trick. To get the placement right, remove the release paper and then stick a needle into the side of the craft foam. And then you can use the needle to move it around until you're happy with the position, and then close the door on that and remove the needle. So you could use tweezer for this, but I used a needle so that I could close the door on the MISTI without a problem. So now I'm stamping that with green ink. Once I'm done, I can remove it. And I found that this adhesive removed very easily from the door of the MISTI. It didn't leave any residue behind. But if you do use an adhesive that leaves residue, you'll just want to use one of the recommended cleaners for the MISTI stamping tool. Okay, so I have a leaf. I removed the release paper from that. Poke the side of it with a needle just so I had something to hold on to, because the adhesive is exposed there. Once I have it positioned, I'll let go of the needle, close the door on the MISTI, and then I can stamp that leaf. Now, one of the advantages of stamping with craft foam is you can put 2 different colors on the craft foam and stamp with it, and it blends better than if you're using a clear stamp. It just happens to be one of the benefits. Now, I also could have stamped all of these pieces at once or kept the outline with it. I just wanted to kind of change up how this die looks when I use it as a stamp. I thought it'd be fun to stamp over that entire piece with the Simon Says Stamp You Matter background stamp, which I use an awful lot. So I'm putting that into my MISTI, and I wanted to make sure I stamped it straight onto our background. I didn't want to mess it up at this point. So I put a little bit of adhesive on the back of my panel, and I line it up on the uninked stamp to make sure it's straight. And then I close my MISTI on it upside down. This will transfer that paper into my MISTI in the perfect position to stamp this straight. I wanted my stamping to be super soft, so I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, which is a light, warm gray color that is perfect for any card. It just gives that soft look to a background, and it matches pretty much anything. You can stamp it once for a very light result, or stamp it a couple of times to make it a little bit darker. So there you can see what it looks like when stamped on top of our sunflower. For the sentiment, I'm using the new Simon Says Stamp Sending Sympathy stamp set. I really like the sweet sentiments in here and decided to use Wish I Could Take Your Pain Away. So I black heat embossed that on the bottom of our stamped panel. I just stamped it with black ink and added clear embossing powder. I wanted to make the sunflower stand out a bit more, so I'm going over all of the sunflower with my Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen. This will just add a clear shimmer to it so it catches the light nicely. I also wanted to kind of frame this just to draw attention towards the center. It was a little too simple for me. So I used the Altenew Fine Frames cover die. This is a die that cuts a bunch of thin frames. I die cut 3 of the same size, glued them together for a stacked look, and now I'm gluing it onto my card. It sits in from the edge of the stamp panel, but I thought that was kind of fun. And here's that Altenew Fine Frames die. Cuts a bunch of frames, and I'll save these for future projects. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on the back of my panel and then glue it onto a piece of white craft foam that is on a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch craft note card. The reason there's craft foam in there is so that it is raised up nicely and it won't get squished in the mail. So here's a look at the final card. You can see the shimmer on our sunflower, the frame that I created by stacking 3 white die cut frames, and the soft background stamp over our sunflower. So this shows one of the many ways you can use craft foam for creating a stamp from your die. Again, check out that other video if you want more ideas, and I'll do some more in the future. But first I wanted to show you how you can make a craft foam stamp from a die and then reuse it over and over again. I again am going to cover a piece of white craft foam with some double-sided adhesive. This time I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Leafy Square die. That's the die you see over there on the left. So I'm going to trim the craft foam piece down to be just bigger than that, and I'll save the rest for another project. So I ran that through my die cut machine, and this time I'm removing the release paper from the outline of this die cut. So you can see how I'm just pulling away the outline and the leaves from this, and I'll leave the release paper on the rest of this piece. Once I have that removed, I'm going to take a piece of acetate this time. This is just thick acetate that I've recycled from some packaging. I've trimmed it down, and I'm going to press that right onto the exposed adhesive. Now I can remove the extra parts that I don't want, the parts that still have the release paper on them. And there we have a stamp that we can keep and reuse over and over if we wanted to. So you could take this and just use a couple pieces of masking tape or painter's tape to tape it to an acrylic block and use it as you would a normal stamp. Now I'm going to show you here how you can tape it to the block. I'm going to use my MISTI stamping tool because of the technique that I plan to do, but you definitely could use an acrylic block for this. Now what I would do is just store this in a little Ziploc bag, or you can just use this stamp over and over again, which you'll see me do on this background. Okay, so I'm moving over to my MISTI stamping tool. I have a piece of craft cardstock in my MISTI. I put a little bit of adhesive on the back of my acetate piece, but that tape is also exposed. So I positioned it where I wanted to stamp, closed the door on my MISTI, and now it's stuck to my MISTI door. This time I decided to stamp with Hero Art's Unicorn White pigment ink. So this shows you can use dye ink or pigment ink for this. What's cool about this is when we stamp this, remember how that dye had little cuts for the veins in the leaves? Well, look at it, even transferred in the stamp. So you can see the little lines in the leaves here. Now, I had a lot of white ink when I stamped this, and I wanted it to be a little muted. That's why you saw me take a cloth and kind of press some of the ink away and remove it. Okay, so now I removed my stamp in the acetate, and I have repositioned it, closed the MISTI door again to grab a hold of it, and then I'll stamp it. So I'm going to keep moving it around and stamping it. Notice that it didn't completely stamp there. That's because I had too much room between the stamp and my cardstock. So I just put some shim cardstock behind my cardstock, and that lifted it up a bit and allowed our stamp to reach it better. So here you can see I'm just going to repeatedly stamp with white pigment ink. I went for a super soft look, and then I heat set it. And now I'm coming in with colored pencils and just adding a little bit of color. I wanted this card to have a very soft background. So I'm just adding a little bit of green pencil, not taking much care at all to make it perfect. I just kind of scribbled it on. And then I also added like a soft pool pencil color around the outside edge of the square. Didn't take me long to do it all, and I like the soft color. I usually do bright colors on my cards, so this was a nice change. Okay, now it's time for the sentiment to go on this. For the sentiment strip, I used the Simon Says Stamp All the Thanks stamp set. I really like this set, the nice clean line sentiments in it. There's big ones and small ones. I just used a thin sentiment and stamped it onto a white strip. Now I also used the Simon Says Stamp Thank You Swirl die that you see there on the top left. I die cut it 3 times from white cardstock and glued them together so I have stacked dimension. So you can see these aren't laying flat on the card. They stand up, which really makes a big difference, especially when you're putting it against a stamped background that might be distracting. So I'm just putting liquid adhesive on the back of this and adding it to the card. The liquid adhesive that I like to use with my die cuts is Gina Connect adhesive. However, you could have put that double-sided adhesive on the back of the cardstock before you die cut it, and that way you would have like a sticker die cut, whatever works for you. I just happen to be used to using the Connect, and I've gotten pretty quick at it. Okay, so once I've positioned the thank and the U, I'm going to add my sentiment strip in the middle. Notice that I moved the thank and U apart. On the die, they're closer together, but I left a gap there in the center so I could add the sentiment strip. By the way, I stamped my sentiment on the strip with a green cardstock, or with a green ink, because I thought that would go well with the soft look of the card instead of using a black ink. I also added a few soft blue colored pearls, and that's it. I added it onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. And there you have a soft card with a soft background that you created by repeatedly stamping a foam stamp that you created with the die. And you still have that stamp left over, and you can do more cards. Okay, for my third example, I wanted to show you that you can actually create your own stamps from dies by using cardstock. You don't need craft foam for this example. The best part about this is you can use the stamps that you create on your card also. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Eucalyptus dies. These are new and I'm going to be using these a lot. I love the look and the detail of these. I die cut several from green cardstocks and I glued them together. These are 4 die cuts thick. So I used the Gina K Connect to glue them together so we have lots of dimension. You want them to be thick for this technique. I also die cut a piece from vellum. That's this the lighter piece that you see there on the top right. And I'm going to glue the vellum die cut on the top of our stacked cardstock die cut. So this is a stacked green cardstock die cut. I'm kind of spreading the adhesive around a little bit. I don't want it to be too thick with the vellum. Then I'm taking my vellum die cut and putting it right on top. This won't look especially good, however, it'll stamp great. So I'll do the same with the other die cuts. I'll glue the vellum die cut on top of our stacked cardstock die cuts. Next, I have a piece of white cardstock in my MISTI stamping tool. Now this is bigger than we need, but that's okay. That way I can trim it down to get the positioning just right in the end. Now on the back of our stacked die cut, I'm putting some temporary adhesive. Any kind of tape runner would work. And I'm positioning it where I want on my cardstock. So the vellum is facing down. The vellum is actually touching our cardstock in the background. The adhesive is facing up towards the camera. I have them positioned just right. I'm going to close the door on my MISTI, and that adhesive will grab a hold of the MISTI door. Once we're done, we can use a cleaner to clean our MISTI. That adhesive will come off easily. Okay, I'm using Simon Says Stamp Fog ink again, and I'm inking up that vellum. And when you stamp it, you'll have a soft look because this is a super soft ink. I stamped it and I realized that I needed a shim behind our cardstock. So I put a couple pieces of cardstock behind it, and this will give me better pressure. So I inked it up again with Fog ink. Again, this will be super light because it's a light ink. And what's cool is the ink is transferring with the detail in the leaves. It actually transfers on that vellum very nicely. So I stamped it a few times with Fog and I decided that I wanted it to be green. So I came in with the green ink and stamped it again. I simply changed my mind and wanted it to be darker. So there you can see the cool impression that you get by stamping with stacked die cuts and vellum on top. The vellum is on the top because you can transfer ink from vellum to paper better than if you inked up cardstock and tried to press it on cardstock. The ink stays wet on the vellum for a bit, so it's perfect to transfer as a stamp. Now I do have a video where I showed how to do this technique with letterpress, and I'll link to that on the top right here if you want to check it out. So now I'm just carefully removing my stacked stamps from the door of my MISTI, and then I'll clean that. And now from our stacked die cuts, I'm going to remove the vellum. I don't need that there anymore. I want the color to show, the colored cardstock. Now this will tear your top cardstock of your stacked die cuts here. That's okay. I'll just take another die cut and glue it on top and nobody will ever know. And we're back to just having simple stacked die cuts made of cardstock. So I just got rid of the vellum ones. So I did that with all of our die cuts here, and then I arranged them onto our white cardstock. After playing around with it for a bit, I trimmed my white cardstock down, and now I'm gluing my stacked die cuts right over the stamping that we did. I like to use liquid adhesive for this also because it allows you to wiggle and move it around until you're happy with where you've positioned it, and then you can leave it there to dry and it'll hold tight. For my sentiment, I used the Simon Says Stamp Friend die. You can see the die cut there. The die set includes the shadow, which I cut from white, and the word friend, which I cut from black. So that'll go perfectly there where all those leaves kind of meet in the center. I wanted a few extra single leaves, so I just cut them or tore them right off of one of my other stacked leaf die cuts. Okay, once I have that all positioned, I wanted to have a little sentiment strip under the word friend. You can see here it says Celebrating You. This is from the new Simon Says Stamp Birthday Word Mix 1 stamp set. So you can see here there are a bunch of birthday sentiments. Some are strips, some are circles, and some are other shapes. The cool thing about this is you stamp one of these in a big block, which you'll see me do. Then you can line up the die cuts with it and cut them all out at once. This same die matches up with another stamp set that has other sentiments. I like that there are multiple sets that match one die. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to stamp one of those blocks from the word mix, stamping it with black ink on white cardstock. And I'll end up with a bunch of sentiments here. I'm only going to use one, but I keep all the extras in a little bowl so I can use them for other cards. So now I'm lining the die up. It lines up perfectly, putting some tape on it, and then running it through my die cut machine. This will cut them all out at once, and we're ready to go to make lots of cards. I'm just going to use the one that says Celebrating You for this example. So I went ahead and glued that underneath the word friend, and now I'm going to add this piece onto the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch green note card. I wanted some lighter green cardstock strips right up against this white piece, so I'm running my liquid adhesive against the edge, and then I have these thin strips that I cut from some scraps, and I'm going to tuck them in right up against that white cardstock piece, and I'll do the same thing on both sides. To finish off the cards, I added a few Hero Arts enamel dots. These are great because they come in a ton of colors, and in one pack you have 3 shades of the same color. So here we have a light green, medium green, and dark green. And there are 3 sizes of each, and they aren't too thick, so they go through the mail nicely. I just used a few of the lighter green on this. And by the way, all of today's cards, I used a shimmer envelope or a metallic envelope from Simon Says Stamp. I love their envelopes. Okay, so here is a look at the completed card. You can see that fun background stamping that we have that matches our die cuts perfectly, and it picked up the detail of the die cuts. So it's a great way to take your dies and use them for softer background stamping also. So remember, just put vellum on the top of your stacked die cuts and you can turn them into a stamp easily. Okay, so those are a few ideas for using your dies to create your own stamps, and I promise to share more in the future. I link all of my supplies in my YouTube description below, and if you are interested, you can head to my blog for much more information. I have a link here up on the top right. In the middle are a couple other videos that might be of interest to you related to today's video. I appreciate the time that you spent with me today. I will see you again soon, and thanks for watching.